Fallout Equestria Heroes, Chapter 33, Moonfall, by the author No One. In a time of destruction, create something.
Freak lightning bolt hit Canyon Ridge Bridge last night, setting off a chain reaction of mines that resulted in the bridge's destruction, an NCA spokesperson confirmed with me.
Mr. Nuhages was saying over the radio.
The NCA spokesman was clear, though, that they were still committed to removing the Minotaur menace, but would have to find alternative routes across the canyon. Meanwhile, an unconfirmed NCA insider who wants to stay anonymous claims the NCA is looking at the recent Enclave remnant split and trying to get one of them to help them across with promises of helping them in their fight. According to this insider, the NCA is not picky on which side they choose.
The radio was lying, obviously. The NCA knew it wasn't lightning, but it was easier to explain than what actually happened. We managed to find some ruins to hunker down in during the nights that kept us mostly warm. We saw a few NCA patrols at a distance, but none came close to us. By morning, the harsh storm had passed and turned into a light drizzle and a cold grey day. That day stayed with us as we walked towards the city. I managed to find and save one of the Megaspell ponies, but I wanted to save them all. And to do that, I needed to find out who all was turned into one. The only way I could figure out how to do that was bust down the Watcher's front door.
Revolutionaries clashed against the Mustangs again last night, turning the northern half of Thiese into a bloodbath. We reached out to the Watchers and Mustangs for comments. The Mustangs refused to comment and the Watchers had this to say.
The radio clicked and Clean-Cut's voice fed over the radio.
The Watchers have always stood for peace and order, and while we have never been fans of the chaotic system of governance Thiese has to offer, we by no means condone these clashes. We understand some think we are the leaders of the revolution, but we are simply healing and providing help to the injured. To be honest, I'm not sure what to tell you. Everyone at the Watchers are praying for an end to the violence.
Mr. Nuhages' voice came over the radio again.
Revolutionaries who claim to be headed by a pony known only as Mr. X have refused all communication, stating only that every pony with eyes and ears can understand their demands. The riots were sparked during a funeral for local hero Pinprick, and since then Mr. House's Black Salamander Casino was mobbed, and his employees were forced to regroup outside the city, with some claiming Mr. House died in the fighting. Molly of the Biases was apparently captured by revolutionaries, but her casino has so far refused to back down. The Mustangs have clashed the most openly with the rioters, and has faced mass defections. Revolutionaries claim the casino is in its last legs. Meanwhile, the remaining Enclave remnants and the Galatian Ponytrons have remained out of the fighting. Both groups claim they support the revolutionary goals, though various revolutionaries revealed they are on the list of the groups the revolutionaries wish to be disbanded or forced out. The revolution has a list of grievances, most stemming from what they say is a systemic failure to provide adequate food and medical supplies following the balefire explosion over the city. It is a dark time for Thiese. Many claiming the darkest since the apocalypse. I, for one, do not wish to live to see the destruction of our great city, but I love you folks out there, and if this ship goes down, I'll be here every day to keep you informed. Stay safe out there, lovelies, and let your worries be carried away in song.
Music started to play over the radio, but my worries were not soothed. We were headed into the heart of chaos. I don't know what the Watchers were trying to pull with this revolution crap, and part of me wondered if they had planned it all. They certainly riled up the public, but that's easy. Controlling them is much harder, and if they lost control, and with the security of the NCA taken away, and the various grudges already in play... The situation seems dire, Platinum Haze said. We had made good time, and by the time the sun was setting, we were nearing the ruined buildings of the aptly named Parasite Mound. We are truly unsure how to resolve these problems that have been presented to us, if we are even attempting to.
I don't know,
I said with a sigh.
The city needs order. The city needs a good smack,
Serenity exclaimed from her position sitting on my back.
Maybe that too.
I would rub my temple in annoyance, but it was difficult to do that and walk at the same time. Still, Hayes said, her voice sounding somewhat distant as she stared into the horizon. Someone will need to step up and provide a balm to the city's ails. We cannot fault these ponies for trying to overthrow the order of Thiese, oppressive and chaotic as it is, but they cannot fight all of Thiese without destroying it. Someone must step up to unite the city. Hayes turned her gaze to stare at me.
What?
Someone needs to lead the city, she said to me again.
You...
That was actually funny. What she was implying...
You're joking.
You have a memorable figure. You look like a pony who could stand against a hurricane without bowing to the wind. A form that demands respect and admiration.
I look like I took a wrong turn into a blender.
You look... She took a deep breath. Like a survivor. Everyone in the wasteland can respect a survivor.
Until they hear me speak.
With my raspy voice and idiotic sayings. Darling. I think that was the first time she called me that. We are simply suggesting a possibility. You are uniquely situated to evoke positive change. You understand not only the systematic problems within the Thiese power structure, but also the conspiracies to undermine that structure that caused the problem. You also have met and worked with many powerful leaders across the region. If not you, perhaps you can find someone to lead in your place.
I
sighed and looked down at the ground.
Maybe.
I couldn't really fault Hayes for thinking of me like that. Or rather, for thinking of anyone in that light. She came from a place of pretty strong central authority, putting it lightly. And I'm sure she meant it only as a positive for me to take up a similar role. But it was just plain stupid. Yes, I knew powerful ponies, but I was a nobody. Worse, a nobody who wasn't even that good at her job. There was no chance anyone would follow me. By then, though, we had made it to Parasite Mound. A lovely little hellhole that today probably looked better than Thiese itself did. The entrance that had once been home to a NCA patrol was now suspiciously empty, and when I looked in their old headquarters I found nothing at all. The NCA stripped everything before abandoning the city. However, as I got further into the town, I saw something strange. Normality. It seemed the radiation that had blanketed the city had died down, as Dragon Slayer claimed it would, and ponies were walking around normally, conducting their business. There was no sign of trouble or fights, nor fires or bullet holes or any damage beyond what you'd expect for the type of ruins there were. It was strange. It seemed the denizens of Parasite Mound didn't care for the revolution, or those that did had already run off through the wall into the city proper. So there was an odd calm surrounding the town. That was until I noticed someone in a dress in the corner of my eye. There was no mistaking the flashy uniform of a finisher, and a townie was speaking to her with some heat and pointing to us. That wasn't good. It was about a minute later, as we were turning a corner, that I noticed all the townies seemed to have vanished from around me, and there was a stereo on the ground by the side of the road.
Here we go,
I said, and as if on cue, music started to blare.
What have we here?
A voice said from the rooftops. I looked up to see two ponies standing on the roofs on either side of us. I had expected finisher dresses, but I was wrong. The two ponies were decked out in power armor. There was no mistaking it as Enclave style, but it seemed the ponies wearing it were determined to make it hard to tell. The armor was painted in pinks and pale blues, with the backs of dresses glued onto them. The Enclave masks were cleverly painted to give the illusion of eyeshadow and blush on the mask's face. The two power-armored ponies jumped from the roof simultaneously, slamming into the ground but looking unfazed. They walked dramatically up to us as the music played in the background.
Cybernetics, scars.
One said in a really bad fake accent.
The Elecon in a dress, not fooling anyone.
The other zucked, her accent seemingly more practiced.
The finishers protect the people here.
the first said, pushing an armored hoof against my chest.
We will have no violence. We want no part in your petty war. Desire your mercenary. You will find no work here.
The other did the same to Platinum Haze.
And we...
One paused and stared at us before laughing.
No way. No way.
Her accent dropped.
Hired gun?
She reached for her mask and pulled it off, revealing the face of the second-in-command finisher. Screenshot. We did business a while ago and I never expected her to look like that.
Screenshot?
I gave her my very best convincing smile.
Can we speak to photo finish? You would not believe it.
The three of us had made our way 3 stories up the photo finish gallery of Z Magics to find Photo Finish, if that was her real name, waiting for us. She too was wearing a set of Enclave armor, though hers was dolled up even fancier.
This flying truck fell from the sky, crash! And inside are the most marvelous and marvelous power armors. Sure, they had corpses inside, but that was no worry. You're welcome,
I said dryly, remembering the night I had taken out the Vertibug clearly. I hadn't really thought that would happen to it, so this was a surprise.
Can I have one?
Serenity asked from my back.
Darling, you are way too small. Perhaps when you are older.
Photo Finish walked across the room towards me, putting a cold metal hoof on my cheek.
You darling look exhausted. I would offer you another bath, but you seemed not to enjoy my last fun. I have been trying to keep track of you, but you are very slippery, mare. I am?
I hadn't really thought I was.
Apparently so. Still here you are, mostly in one piece. What exactly do you want?
That was a good question. What did I want?
You created peace here?
I remember that when I first came to Parasite Mound, Lucky gave me a stern warning about the dangers here, but compared to Dice proper, it was a breath of fresh air.
Yes, sir.
She smiled proudly at the suggestion and walked over to the nearest window to stare dramatically out of it. The finishers needed a steady source of drama to keep functioning.
So I cannot take all the credit. Refugees from the north came down, fleeing the Enclave, and found themselves here. Too poor to enter the city. So they stayed here, wanting to rebuild. We facilitated them, and we used them to increase our standing. They needed food, of course, and water. It was hard to feed them, and costly. But the happy populace is a productive one. With hard work together, we've built something here. Something that outlasted Dice, it seems. Could you do it in Dice?
She laughed. It was one of these fake mocking laughs.
Dice has always spat on us here. It can burn. We will rise. What reason would I have to help save the mess they brought on themselves?
I was so happy she can't the accent. I felt like I needed a translator. Still, I didn't really have a good answer for her. She seemed content to let Dice burn, perhaps out of selfishness, or because of a grudge. But I got the feeling they were excuses to mask over the real fact of the matter. She couldn't help even if she wanted to. The finishers had limited personnel and limited funds. And from the sounds of it, they nearly bankrupted themselves maintaining order in their own neck of the woods.
I was told once that the finishers wanted to civilize the wasteland. Well, there are thousands of people next door, waiting for that.
It wasn't really true, but it was a good embellishment. She looked back at me before sighing and looking back out of her window.
I cannot help Dice. It is lost. The people angry, and rightfully so, but anger is not conducive to peace. I can't provide them a means to let out their anger, and even if this was not the case, the finishers are too small to fix such a large city. What if...
I chewed on my lip as a plan came together. Well, not so much a plan, as plans require details, but an idea. A vague shape in my mind that would one day grow into an idea. It was what I had.
What if you had help?
She didn't look back at me.
What if I could get you something?
She turned to look at me again, this time taking a step forward.
Speak already. All the Ponytrons.
Even though she was wearing glasses, I could tell she was going wide-eyed at my proclamation.
All of them. In dice. I could get them, let you control them, under one condition.
She laughed again. She did that a lot. It was probably unhealthy.
I'll bite, darling. If you can give all the ponytrons in dice, I'll do whatever you wish. Don't use them. Not until I say so. Darling, what's the point of having them then?
I rubbed my temple with my hoof.
Just trust me. I don't.
Well, that hurt my feelings.
But a promise I only have to keep after you do some insane task is an easy promise to make. So sure, I hope then you'll tell me more details of whatever you're thinking. But that still begs a question. What are you doing here now? Trying to get into the city.
Serenity at some point had wandered off to jump on the nearby bed, but stopped long enough to say that.
I can help with that. I know a tunnel, and with chaos in the city, it will not be hard to make it through unmolested. Is that all? Info on the Watchers, the revolution, everything.
I quickly added before she could bring up a complaint.
Everyone in Dice spies. You know what's going on there, more than me.
She smiled and motioned to a cushion on the ground.
Have a seat, darling. I will get someone to get us tea.
It turned out that the finishers didn't know a lot about the Watchers because, like with most ponies, they assumed the Watchers were harmless, which was the most clever thing they had managed to do. However, according to Photo Finish, Molly had been captured by the Watchers while investigating their facility and was currently being held by revolutionary forces somewhere in the tunnels. She made it clear to me that if I wanted to find out anything about how the Watchers were run, I'd have to ask her. Though I suppose Serenity knew stuff too, but nothing that really helped me find what I was looking for. That made my goal perfectly clear. Find Molly, pray she wasn't harmed, and make her give me the information I needed. Or go straight for the Watchers and walk in blind, which I was reluctant to do after how poorly it had served me before. Of course, the idea of going to Molly for help wasn't much better. If I was being honest, it was probably a far worse decision, given how much more open she was about trying to kill me, as opposed to the Watcher's stealthy technique. But she was supposedly locked up, so I probably wouldn't get shotgunned, even if she was as stubborn as a mule. Was it racist? Either way, we set off down some tunnels. I really dislike tunnels considering everything. Yet there I was once again, this time being led by a slightly off-putting mare who kept drinking from a flask whenever she thought we weren't looking. Not that I could judge.
Darling.
Why did they all have to do the accent? I get it was for show, but come on.
You should have hung up that dress. You look wunderbar, totally, even with the wrinkles. But it could be so much better.
Platinum Haze lowered her head somewhat. She was still wearing the dress she wore to the NCA base, and I guess it was sort of wrinkled.
We apologize. We had not the time to properly care for it. Oh, you're that finisher who made us dresses at one time,
I said when the realization finally hit me.
Yeah, darling.
She kept on leading us, not even bothering to look back.
It was not so long ago for you to lose your memory. Long for me.
A lot had happened since then. It felt like a different world.
And, you all dress so similar. Huh.
The dark tunnel led to a small door near an impassable pile of rubble.
This is as far as I will go.
She tapped on the door a few times.
Dresses like this I doubt they would look kindly on me. Would you like some advice?
I nodded. I wasn't really sure what I was getting into, but I was sure advice could never hurt. Her accent dropped completely.
The ponies are frightened, angry and hungry. Large groups of frightened, angry, hungry ponies tend not to be the most sociable, nor the most likely to listen to reason. But you shouldn't treat them like the enemy. They're a symptom of a larger problem, and while their actions are their own, you can't take apart the reality that made those actions possible. That's all. A mob is scary and dangerous, but if you hate, you'll never learn.
With another acknowledging nod, I started towards the door, opening it slowly only to be stopped by a hoof on my back. I looked over at the mare and she looked seriously back at me, her rosy sunglasses falling down her nose so I could see her olive green eyes.
I don't know what you're planning, but if you can help, do it.
She gave me a cheerful smile and pushed her glasses back up over her eyes.
It's all above my pay grade, darling.
She started walking back out the way we came, humming to herself.
Follow the path, you'll be fine. I like him,
Serenity said from my back as we walked forward into more dingy tunnels. It was dark, but my eye could pierce the blackness and Serenity and Haze could cast light besides.
Her,
I corrected Serenity as we made our way through what I think was a long-lost bedroom. At the very least there was a broken metal bed frame and what must have been the remains of a mattress. I think there was a dresser, though it was blackened with mold and broken down. Shattered remains of a mirror lay strewn around the dresser, though it took a second for me to realize how covered with dust they were. It was easy to forget these tunnels under the city were built to save. There was a faint rumbling in the distance as we moved on, weaving between bedrooms and dining rooms. A whole apartment complex by the looks of it. Eventually we realized the rumbling was talking and walking. A whole heck a lot of it.
We knew they fled underground. We suppose they must have set up a home of sorts nearby.
Haze reasoned, no doubt inspired by her orphanage which had a very similar setup.
When I was here before...
I looked around the hallway we were in. The lights were flickering above now, which meant wherever we were it must have been used recently, but everything else was new to me. Or at least I didn't remember it.
Not here, but after the explosion, there were markets and a great amount of chaos. If we try to blend in quietly, we probably won't be noticed. Then what?
Serenity always asked the tough questions.
We need to find Molly, not sure how. Ask around maybe.
That wouldn't really be suspicious at all.
Sneak around. We like sneaking, right?
We are a blue alicorn, and have been granted the magical gift of invisibility from our mother. We would be remiss not to use this ability whenever we can. And if we are being honest, we find ponies looking at us unnerving, due to how often we remain out of sight, Haze said bashfully. Or nervously. Those two things really aren't the same, but they seem to get mixed up a lot.
Of course!
Serenity jumped off my back and ran in front of me.
I'm basically a ninja now. Scooterborg is actually pretty jealous, so don't tell her.
I was pretty sure she was close enough to eavesdrop.
So, blend in. Then try to find someone who looks important. Stalk them. Pray to Celestia it works.
It was as good a plan as I ever had, though Haze snorted softly when I mentioned praying to Celestia. Probably was poor choice of words on my part, considering.
We see nothing dangerously wrong with this plan,
Platinum Haze said, and Serenity seemed to agree the way she went marching off expecting us to follow her. We did, of course, because it was just easier than trying to rein her in. It wasn't hard to follow the noise, considering the way it echoed down the halls. I heard once that the poorest of the poor lived in the tunnels under the city, with everyone else living above. That was before the radiation, of course. I also noted that my pip-bug wasn't ticking, though we were close to the surface. But I had to wonder what happened to those ponies when the rest of the city moved in. The tunnels were designed to hold tens of thousands. So did they just slink off to a darker corner, or did they try to blend in? Maybe it was silly to be thinking of them, but someone had to, right? Regardless, we found out where we were going not minutes later. It was a rather small door, but the noises we were hearing were obviously coming from the other side.
Quietly,
I said, opening the door and slinking in. The room was large, much larger than I was expecting, simply massive in scope. Even though the ceiling was only a little higher than the rest of the tunnels, the room echoed with noise from the multitudes of ponies crowded in the room. But most of the noise seemed to be coming from a pony on the far end of the hall standing on a small stage. He seemed to be in the middle of a speech.
Tonight we will strike a final blow against the Mustangs and take the water back.
His gaze fell on me. You! He pointed, and with that the entire room grew quiet and turned towards me. It was then I realized what I had done. The ponies were dressed in varying sorts of armor, from what looked like stolen NCA armor to bits of scrap tied together with string. Many had their faces covered with masks, or helmet, or painted, and all were carrying some sort of weaponry. Apparently I had interrupted some sort of war meeting. Riot meeting. Something I shouldn't have. Really stealthy of me. I gulped, looking around, the eyes of 100 ponies boring into me.
Sorry, wrong room.
Stop, the stallion said as I tried to turn to leave. He was wearing basic brown combat armor, and he alone had nothing covering his face, but considering how plain it was, I suppose that wasn't really necessary. Cyberleg, scarred face, large weaponry. Glad to see he had working eyes. You are a Thiese! The crowd booed at this proclamation and I shrank back. I was a strong mare, but fighting such a large group wouldn't really work.
Was.
I said, trying to be heard over the din.
I quit.
So a coward besides? The rather annoying leader said. While we suffered below the streets, your boss lavished in his precious radiation. He got what was coming to him. I didn't like the sound of that. I looked over to Platinum Haze for help.
We mean you no harm. We are simply,
I saw her horns start to glow, no doubt to turn us invisible, but as soon as she did, the entire crowd seemed to shrink back, and I saw guns start to come up. Wait! A familiar voice pierced through the din. A thin, light blue Pegasus pushed his way through the crowd. He was wearing a jumpsuit and a piece of cloth wrapped around his face. She's with me, he said, walking towards me, and I couldn't help but smile. She's a bit of a huge idiot, so she didn't think when I asked her to meet me here.
Flair!
I sighed, moving forward to give him a hug, but stopping myself. It felt too awkward.
It's, good to see you again.
He made things less awkward by patting me gently on the back. You too. We have a lot to catch up on. He looked back at the stallion at the podium, who just shrugged and continued his speech as Flair let me off out of the crowded room. It was just like Flair to come back at the best possible moment. I'm surprised. I left you alone for nearly a week and you still have all your limbs, he said when the door closed behind us. He kept walking like he knew where he was going, so I kept following. Unless you have really convincing cybernetics.
It's all me,
I said to the back of his head as he led us on.
Uncle Flair,
Serenity said, eventually jumping on his back.
I missed you too.
She gave him a warm hug around the neck, and Flair sort of tilted his head towards it as a way of reciprocating without stopping. That's me. I got something for you too. Serenity let out a high-pitched
"Oh!"
that deflated when Flair finished his sentence. When we get to my room. She eventually quieted down as Flair hit an intersection and inspected each dank hallway quickly before continuing on. So I heard the war was stalled. He turned back his head, so one of his pink eyes was looking at me. Something about a bridge?
A shame,
I said dryly.
A damn shame. It just fell apart.
The radio said the NCA was looking into possible culprits. Sounds serious. I hope they catch the perp. If it wasn't obvious before, it was obvious then that they knew I was involved.
It's just a bridge. Probably saved lives. It's a stupid war.
We stopped at an inconspicuous door etched into the fairly unremarkable hall.
Got someone out, though, like me.
Flair let himself chuckle and let out a wholly inappropriate explosion sound as he opened up the door. You're good at getting into trouble.
Getting out, too.
The three of us followed Flair into the room. It was a moderately sized apartment with a small dining table, a couch, what was once a TV, and the faint smell of decay.
Are you good at it?
Maybe. Flair closed the door once we all settled in before walking over to the couch and collapsing on it, draping a wing over the back of the couch and letting one leg swing freely off of it. He tore off the cloth around his face with a sigh and exaggerated gasp of air.
We hate to question your activities,
Platinum Haze said as her eyes scanned the apartment. But you seem to have integrated yourself within this group rather quickly. Flair lifted his head to look up at the large alicorn. I knew a lot of them once. Spent a few good years on the streets. After my fallout with the Enclave. They're a good sort. Don't let the masks and intimidation fool you. Most are worried parents or sick teenagers looking for the better life the city promised them. Their leader is a dullard, but what can you do? He chuckled. The Enclave, the part I represent anyway. We really need to set about giving the new factions names to keep track better. He sort of trailed off and I coughed into my hoof harshly to throw him back on track. What? Right. They sent me here to spy. And see what the other Enclave is doing.
So?
I asked. So what? I took a seat on the nearest wooden chair, hearing it creak underneath me. Thankfully it held.
Did you find out anything?
He rolled his eyes and dropped his head back down onto the arm of the couch. The Watchers are behind this, but the people don't know. Once the rest of the gang leaders are caught or bite the dust, and they will, the Watchers and Enclave will swoop in. He made a swooping motion with his hoof, in case I wasn't clear, and neatly solve all the problems. They will take control and then, I don't know.
That ain't so bad, is it?
Serenity said, making all heads in the room snap to her.
I mean, you know...
She gulped before standing up straighter.
Their methods, I mean, they're all messed up and stuff, you know? But if it works, then it'll still be good, isn't it?
That was a fair point until Flair interrupted. Maybe, he admitted, sitting up out of his slouched position. But if they're willing to do all this, he pointed up towards the city, to gain power, what will they do to keep it? I wasn't really sure that was a fair assessment, but I accepted it because I really wanted to make those fuckers pay for what they did to me. Serenity didn't seem very impressed by the argument and kicked at the table lightly to show her disapproval.
But you can't know that. Or they'll take more power.
I sighed, leaning against the table.
The NCA would be weak. War with the Minotaurs. Maybe that's... you know...
We can't know that, Flair said, before Serenity had a chance to rebut. But I could tell she really wanted to. It doesn't matter. After everything they've done, like, you know, trying to blow you up, starting wars, stoking the flames of rebellion. He got up off the couch and walked towards the kitchen. Someone needs to be held accountable. Maybe we aren't the hoof of Celestia falling from the heavens to smite the wicked. But if we can deal out justice, well... He trailed off doing... something in the kitchen. Making tea, maybe?
We are uncertain we should,
Platinum Haze said, standing in the middle of the room like Flair bought a statue but didn't realize how much room it'd take up. That was a tortured simile.
We have no right to demand justice. We may be...
She sighed.
Perhaps our personal perspective are overtaking reason.
Maybe that's a common problem.
I got up from my chair to see what Flair was doing in his little kitchenette. Sure enough, it was tea.
So, is this your home?
I had thought at first he had just been here since the Enclave sent him on his little spy mission, but he seemed really at home. Found it years ago. Power worked, so I spent a while cleaning it up, when I wasn't sleeping on the streets. Good location, nice amenities. Locking doors so people can't jack my shit. He sipped his newly made tea with a delighted sigh. So, what now?
We need to find Marley.
I hadn't really expected to find Flair there, so I wasn't really sure how to explain the plan to him. The psychotic mule who is in charge of the biases and literally tried to kill you half a dozen times? The same one who is currently captured by the very revolutionaries I've spent a week ingraining myself in? I nodded. Okay, just making sure. He sipped his tea. When do we start?
Don't you want to know more?
He gave a shrug as he put his mug down. Why? It's probably something insane and it's more fun this way. That made no sense, but I wasn't about to argue. I'll show you the way to Heza... Flair was cut off by a stern knock on the door. It was annoyingly convenient. It's unlocked. The door creaked open, revealing the guy from the stage before. He was still incredibly unremarkable. A brown coat with a dark yellow mane and a brown leather jacket on top of that all, combined to give him the appearance he was burst from mud that morning. He was leaning against the door frame lazily with a simple SMG hanging around his neck.
Flair? Glorious leader?
Flair replied sarcastically. So your friends are here. Good. His eyes were sharp though, and distrusting.
So you worked for House?
He didn't move from his position blocking the door and seemed to do his best to make sure nobody was comfortable except him.
Yes.
I too was good at making people uncomfortable, but he didn't flinch at my mismatched glare.
Explain. He hired me.
I said simply, moving slightly closer.
Then I quit. Our goals were not aligned.
Are our goals aligned? That was a dumbass question.
No.
I said, resisting the urge to roll my eyes.
But they don't contradict. Is that all you wanted?
He didn't move from his spot, but his gaze shifted from me to Flair.
The Mustangs fall tonight. They have the key to fresh water that our people desperately need.
So? He sighed.
I'm calling in the favor.
Flair looked momentarily shocked before sighing and lowering his head.
After all these years, I thought you forgot.
Flair looked over at me.
The glorious leader here once paid off my debt with some, collectors. Drug collectors, no doubt. Out of the goodness of his heart and apparently the knowledge he would someday lead a revolution to overthrow corrupt and failing systems of governance.
You're a doll. He pushed himself straight.
2 hours will be masked before the door to Mayhem's casino. Be there. Bring your friends if you want. Maybe our causes will be aligned when she sees the good work we do. If not, then do what you need to with her and be on your way.
He pushed himself into a standing position and turned around, leaving the door open. There was an awkward silence hanging in the air for a minute before I finally broke.
So, you and him...
I didn't need to say anything more.
We did not.
He shouted in exasperation, but I continued to stare.
One time. One. He wasn't even that good.
I don't know if he was playing up his frustration, but either way it made me smile and reminded me why I liked him. Flair did end up giving Serenity her present, which turned out to be a new gun attachment for Scooterborg, which Serenity spent the next 30 minutes attaching properly before playing with her, and Platinum Haze near the couch while Flair and I talked in the kitchen.
So, how's it going?
I asked, leaning slightly against his fridge, which to my surprise actually seemed to be functioning.
In general, or...
His voice trailed a little bit as he glanced towards the two playing in what I supposed was his living room.
You know...
Dash.
He face-huffed and sighed.
You're supposed to be all cryptic about it, gosh.
He looked back at the others again before leaning in towards me, his voice lowering.
Listen, I have it covered for now. I mean, dealers aren't hard to find in tough times, and I have enough caps.
I gave him a stern look.
I know, you do recognize the hypocrisy here, right?
Yes.
Then,
he added sharply,
you know the only recourse is through the Watchers themselves, who you are no doubt aware are out for blood. Listen, I don't want to scare any of you, but ever since yesterday I swear someone has been following me. They know who we are, and that we are a threat. We can't go there for help, even if we wanted to.
Do you want to?
He sighed and stood up straight.
Yes, no, maybe.
He rubbed his forehead.
It's all fucked up. We're all fucked up. I know I shouldn't have relapsed, but it was too much to handle. And it's getting worse. Once we're done with all this shit, I can drop it. Once the stress is gone.
Will it ever be?
He raised an eyebrow at me, so I guess I had to talk more.
Damn. We kill Clean Cut, destroy the Watchers. What then?
We win?
He shook his head as soon as he heard the answer.
That's bullshit, isn't it?
Someone has to run the city. Walkirk is useless, he can't adapt.
Maybe his program was faulty. Maybe the brain transfer didn't work properly. But there was something seriously off about him that I couldn't trust.
So what? We'll be the new rulers?
He stood up straight and posed dramatically. I swear his mane was blowing in the wind.
President Flair the Grey and my Vice President Missing Limbs.
he said just loud enough that behind him I saw Platinum Haze look over in abject confusion. We aren't fit to run a vegetable stand, nevertheless a city. His mane deflated, or maybe it was all my imagination. And you know it, even without the whole drug abuse thing.
So, someone has to.
Let the gangs take control, Flair said dismissively.
Those gangs, they would have burnt the city if Walkirk wasn't there. And it still led to this, revolution.
That and the Watchers pulling levers. He sighed in defeat, leaning against the counter. So we need to find someone not shit at running a city and give them power? As we control them from the background to make sure they don't go full Nightmare Moon? Is that the plan?
Maybe. Just thinking out loud, I do have plans though.
He raised his eyebrow again. I swear he did that too much for my likings.
I'll tell you if they work, or I finish them. Trust me?
Figuring out you're actually a bomb with legs changed you, he said simply, and all I could do was nod. My voice cracked.
I won't live forever.
My eyes fell past Flair to Serenity, who was energetically having Scooterborg attack Platinum Haze's mane.
If I can make the world safer, I won't be around to protect her forever.
I blinked hard to get rid of any tears.
Okay.
I walked past him.
It's time, isn't it?
He nodded, following me, then overtaking me. Alright, he said to the assembled group. I have to go blow up a door, then we'll split off and find Molly for whatever messed up reason. I'm sure it won't up terribly or anything. With that, he left his house and led us outside. The sun was just barely peeking over the horizon when we got outside. Due to walls and buildings, I couldn't actually see the sun, but it was easy to see the way the sky was streaking with orange and the clouds were on fire. It made the empty dye streets glow with an eerie light. Well, I suppose they weren't exactly empty, but it did make for a nicer image. In truth, the street around the Mustang's home base was far from empty. The large building brought back memories, and it stood defiant, even choosing to keep all the lights on in the entire building. The crowd of ponies that were meeting down below were now amassing towards the entrance, stomping all over the fountains where water shows used to play, their guns ready and looks of murder in their eyes. Flair, Serenity and Haze, and I, watched some distance away as the leader of the so-called rebellion led his troops towards the door, before turning and heading towards us. My eyes fell off of him and towards the huge buildings we were supposed to be assaulting. It must have been my imagination, but I swore I saw a glint of something in one of the windows. Do you have the charges? The brown stallion asked, looking at Flair. Mayhem has always been paranoid, and the entrance to his home has been as impossible to get through as he is stubborn. Yes, he said, the perpetual grin always on his face. Though my contacts weren't happy, and I'm still certain that it'd be easier to just blow a wall than... Not again. The stallion looked nonplussed at the suggestion. It's symbolic. With House gone and Molly in our pants, this is the final strike to show who truly owns the city. He turned to point towards the entrance to the building, which even at a distance I could see was like a massive wall of metal. Get it set and I'll... There was a sound like a thunder crack. I took a surprised step backwards, and the others followed suit. Except for the brown stallion, who stood stock still for a good few seconds before toppling over, blood pooling on the ground below him. Shit. His voice was a harsh whisper. Help them. Help. I walked past him as Haze's horn started to glow. More cracks echoed out, but no more aimed at us. The mob of ponies started screaming and shots were fired back at the windows. This wasn't going to do. We weren't here to fight their war.
Haze, shield! Serenity, help them!
I pointed at the brown stallion and the pink filly ran over to do what she could.
Flair, fly over and set up the charges. The ponies are panicking. I'll try to get them back away from the door.
With a nod, Flair flew over and I charged towards the crowds that seemed to be rushing at the door. I hated crowds. Worse when the crowds were shoving and shooting, and more so when others were shooting back. Still, I pressed into the teeming mass of a crowd, shoving my way past everyone. Some of them looked shocked as I pushed them aside, but I was already gone. The crowd pushed back, but I was stronger. And as more shots cracked, the crowd seemed to disperse more, but not enough. I eventually pushed my way to the metal behemoth of the door, to see Flair flying along with bombs, and to see 20-odd ponies pointlessly pushing at the door. Some even shooting at it, as if ricochet was something that could never hurt them.
Pick off!
I shouted, my voice getting lost in the din.
Move!
I grabbed one stallion near the door and pushed him so hard he slid across the ground, his armor scraping loudly. That was enough for the rest of the ponies looking at the door to stop and look at me.
Are you trying to die? They're shooting!
A mare screamed. We need to get in to stop them! The stallion agreed.
Then move!
I pointed at Flair, who was hovering above, planting plastic-looking stuff over the hinges of the large metal door.
It'll break the door. What do you think it'll do to you?
They stared at me for a bit longer.
Move!
They finally left the door, pushing back against the crowd that was trying to push forward. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give them room not to die. I wasn't even sure why I cared about these ponies. They were throwing themselves into a war after all. But if they were so determined to die, it might as well be in a less embarrassing way.
Flair?
I said, moving with the crowd to get away from the door.
When ready?
It didn't take long for Flair to fly to me and set the whole thing off. Boom! It felt like a punch to the chest, and between the brightness and smoke it blinded me for a good 20 seconds. When I opened my eyes and could see again, the door was still there, however, though blackened and dented.
Flair?
I asked, but he didn't even seem to hear me. Instead, he watched with a smile. With a creak and a groan, the door shook before toppling over with a resounding thud, and a cheer behind us. The cheer turned to gunfire when on the other side of the door was more than a dozen ponies, guns pointed at us.
Shit!
I dove for Flair and dropped him to the ground as behind us ponies charged past us to fight and die. It didn't take long for the air to smell of blood and gunpowder.
Come on!
I dragged him to his hoofs and pushed back against the charging crowd. No tactics at all, Flair muttered beside me as we pushed through. Stepped on my wings, those jerks! Not really having the time to worry about that sort of thing, I kept pushing as bullets whizzed past me. The only direction I could go was forward, so when I reached one of the fountains with ponies still on top of it firing at the building, I climbed up. Aside from the few ponies still up there shooting, the path was finally clear, and in the distance I could see Thiese's shield alone on the city streets. Just in time to be blasted in the face with something wet. The sudden burst of water shooting into the air knocked me off my hoofs, and when I scrambled to get back up I saw everyone else on the platform having similar trouble. Then I saw one of the ponies' head snap back with a spray that turned the water pink.
Shit!
I grabbed Flair and tossed him on my back and pushed through the dancing wall of water, ignoring it, the colorful lights, and the sudden blaring of music that accompanied it. I burst out of the other side of the fountain and towards the purple bubble that was Thiese's shield. Once we got there, Flair jumped off my back and the two of us turned towards the chaos of the street. It was a bit of a surreal sight, to see the water dance to music and lights as gunfire and explosions echoed through the night. If you ignored the fighting and focused on the water, it all seemed like it was part of the show.
How is he?
I asked as Platinum Haze lowered the shield, revealing the blood-stained brown pony. His chest seemed to be moving slightly, but in short, uneven bursts.
Not good,
Serenity said, looking up at me.
I mean, alive, but, he needs to see like a real doctor or something.
Her hoofs were stained bloody, and her face was twisted into a frown.
You did everything you could,
I said, patting her on the head.
But we can't wait here.
We're just going to leave him? Flair asked, his voice tinged with shock.
We can do no more for him, but perhaps we should inform those who he is closest to and let them deal with him.
Platinum Haze said, looking towards the din.
Whatever you do,
I said harshly.
Do it quickly.
I turned back towards the chaos.
They're up here, so Molly will be easy to get to.
You might be surprised to know that the prison of the revolutionaries was in some Celestia forsaken tunnel near the bottom of the tunnels, where there was bare rock for floor instead of, well, floor. The last time we had traveled that far was unpleasant to say the least, so I was wary as we walked silently through the darkened caverns. We passed a few guards with flashlights and the like, but those were easily avoided, and flares soon led us into the heart of the complex. A small empty room with a mule sitting in it, chained by all 4 hoofs.
Like moths to a flame.
The mule did not look up at us as we entered the room. The room was guarded, of course, but I simply broke down the wall from the room next door while Serenity cast her silence spell. It worked like a charm.
You do not know how to stay away.
The mule's mane was in disarray, and her coat was stained and dirty. A single candle was lit in the room, making shadows dance across her face.
Molly,
I walked towards her close enough I could see for sure who it was.
you're looking good.
Ah.
Her eyes were downcast, but she had a wicked smile plastered on her face.
How they have been waiting to tear me down. These ponies never liked me. Something about my ears being too long. Also, how horrible a person I am. But I remained. Then explosions and war. So I go curious as a cat.
She finally looked up at me, her eyes harsh and unafraid.
I could trust nobody else. So I went to see what the Watchers were up to. And I found out.
I licked my lips as she started talking and motioned for Serenity to stay nearby to continue to make us soundproof, and for Flare and Haze to keep watch to make sure we weren't interrupted. Molly's eyes lingered on Haze as she left.
Lovely mare you have there. I'm sorry for breaking up your date, but it was a matter of principle. You were my enemy and eating at my casino. No hard feelings.
I towered above her, moving closer to intimidate.
You tried to have me killed. Multiple times. Fuck your apologies. What did you find?
She was as unafraid as ever. Maybe she was already expecting to die, in which case, what could I scare her with?
A megaspell chamber.
What?
What?
I looked over at Serenity and she seemed as confused as me.
You mean in the mountain? Hidden under dice. Looked new, fancy. A spider's brand new web to trap those unsuspecting. The Watchers are making bombs.
She grinned viciously.
Made of ponies.
I guess she really couldn't have known I already knew that, but it was still amusing to see confusion on her face when I ignored that part.
I should have figured. A megaspell chamber here. Easier than dragging ponies to the mountain.
You knew?
She seemed annoyed that I ruined her secret.
Nobody else would believe me. Those Watchers are mad, and these revolutionaries are playing right into their hoofs. They'll be swallowed up before they realize.
Can you show me where it is?
You wish to destroy it?
Well, duh.
Serenity spoke up with a roll of her eyes.
What else?
Then what?
Ponies needed to stop asking me that question. Mules too.
The Watchers.
Molly struggled against her chains, making them jingle slightly.
Then what?
We exchanged glares.
The city is broken. Dice is dead. It was a dream, a good dream, but it's no more. And perhaps it never should have been. But the old dog can learn new tricks if we can tame it.
What? You think I'll give you any sort of power?
She laughed at the idea as much as I did. Good to see we were on the same page.
No, but I want to help. We've had our differences, sure, but we can look past them. I can reorganize the biases, and with them you'd have a force to help stabilize the city. Assuming you even defeat the Watchers.
I scowled at her.
Then what? You betray me? Why should I trust you?
Because...
She tugged at the chain some more in annoyance before looking back up at me.
Who else? My people are loyal and strong. House is dead, I hear, and selfish and isolationist beside. You broke up with him, and he won't have you back. Mayhem is a violent fool. Granny Dynamite has been dead for a while if my spies are right, which they usually are. The Enclave is fractured, one side supporting the Watchers, the others too weak to help. The Steel Rangers care for dice about as far as they can throw it. The NCA has cut its losses with dice, and seem content to let the fires burn the city, then pick at its carcass like vultures. Who then will rebuild your city? Who then will protect it? You are a predictable pony at times.
Her eyes fell to Serenity, who was standing awkwardly by, her horn covered with her pink magic.
You want a city for your daughter. You need me.
I spat on the ground by her hoofs.
Fine.
Her head lowered and once again became shrouded in shadows.
Save the city by yourself, then watch it turn to dust in your hoofs. You got your information. Go and let me die in peace.
There was a good minute where no pony spoke. We just stared at each other in awkward silence.
What do you want?
I eventually asked.
You know, in general.
Peace, freedom, respect.
She flicked her mane out of her face.
I rule with an iron hoof because it's all these people will allow. Show weakness and be killed, more so when I am so unlike them. I have no kin, and my body won't ever allow me to. But I still love this city. When I was younger I wanted power, but it was foolish. All I want now is for the city to be free of these petty wars. I sought to take out Mustang and take his power, not because of greed. Well, not entirely because of greed, but because of the knowledge that once I threatened the balance of power, I could finally end this charade of peace.
Her face lowered and she sighed.
But I fed into it, didn't I? The fear and paranoia I helped instill led to all this. But I have a chance to fix it. Free me from my shackles, and I will give you my loyalty. My people. You want a free and secure city? So our goals are aligned.
She kept talking and talking. I was tired of it. Tired of her words. The way she spoke them off. Everything. I rose my hoofs into the air and brought them down. Crack! The chains around her hoofs broke easily to me. She blinked up at me as I went about breaking the others as well. When my work was finished, I looked down at her. Dirty thing that she was.
You'll show me to the chamber, then you'll return to your hotel. Then leave the city, go to the finishers and wait for my instructions.
She slowly stood up and stretched out her legs before giving me an odd smile.
You'll never regret this.
I already do.
This was going to go poorly, I already could tell. I guess there was always the option of killing her later. Just then Flare and Platinum Haze stormed back into the room from the hole I made.
We are afraid there is a slight...
Guards are coming!
Flare interrupted Haze, pointing towards the hallway.
Bringing food when they saw us!
They weren't the best warning system as the door suddenly creaked open.
Fucking!
I pushed past the two of them and let out a gout of flame from my flamethrower, igniting the ground in front of the door and bathing the room in a red glow. Behind the wall of flames, the guards shouted and backed off, but I was fairly sure I managed to miss them and block their path. Through the crackling fire, I swore I heard one of them yell,
They've got the prisoner! Sound the alarm!
Moths to the flame was an analogy,
Molly explained as she dug through a box that was off to the side of the room.
I did not expect you to take it seriously.
She stood up, her black hat back on her head.
There, now we can leave.
How? The way we came will be swarming. Our going invisible trick isn't going to work.
Flare pointed out.
We're the worst ninjas.
Serenity said with a sigh, staring at the flames.
Flare?
I pointed at the wall on the other side of the room from where we had entered.
Door!
He happily obliged, and a few well-timed explosions later, and we had a brand new door. One I didn't really have time to appreciate as we rushed out and back into the tunnels. We managed to escape the Revolutionary Guards, and to be honest, it wasn't that difficult. They were well-meaning, but not really well-trained. The only problem was the escape route we took was circuitous, and in the tunnels actually finding your way was difficult even if it was an area you were familiar with, which we weren't. So an hour later we were clambering through barely lit tunnels. The only sounds were our hoofs on the metal grating below. Eventually, Platinum Haze spoke up, looking over at our dirty mule companion.
We are surprised you have agreed to assist us, considering you did attempt our murder last time we met.
No hard feelings,
Molly said, adjusting her head somewhat.
So I must say, your disguise was not the best, but I guess there's no getting around your height.
Platinum Haze blushed slightly and looked away.
We expected some might notice, so your attack forced us to reveal our wings, which was unpleasant.
Well, sorry,
Molly said reluctantly. So we're really just forgiving her? I looked back to see Flair scowling at the mare. She did try to kill us and you, and now she's on our side? I mean, really?
You got a problem, bird?
She replied with an incredibly unhelpful sneer, turning to face him.
I run an organization that employs more people than you could count. What do you bring to the table?
Loyalty, explosions, a history of not trying to murder the people I'm working with. My good looks.
Your enclave,
she snorted.
Loyalty is not your kind's strong suit. Murder is so.
My kind? Coming from a mule that's rich. As soon as Flair stopped talking, I could feel the tension in the air. So much I put myself between the two of them before they started making out or killing each other.
Stop it! Pretend to like each other. Then never talk again once we get out.
There, that was my get-over-it speech. Of course, it didn't work, but it was worth a shot. You can't honestly trust her. Flair looked flabbergasted. I mean, after every...
I don't, but she deserves a second chance, and if she tries to betray us, I'll just kill her. Way to make me feel part of the proceedings, boss.
Molly said in a tone that implied the idea of me killing her was amusing. I was about to produce an amazing rebuttal when the sounds of cocking guns interrupted me. We had been so busy arguing we didn't notice the wall beside us moving. Well, Serenity had, as I just noticed she was frantically tugging at my armor. On the other side of the door was a sterile white room with a large red pony with metal legs surrounded by guards. It was then I realized where I was. Right beside the moon's secret entrance to the Thiese tunnels. What a surprise! Mayhem grinned, tapping his cybernetic leg on the ground. Here to finish the job? His mane looked wild and unkempt, and he had bags under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping. His hotel going up in flames might have been part of that. Here to destroy the Mustangs? You started this ever since you killed
You always were one to beg at a master's table.
Molly stepped forward, and despite her recent captivity and filthy form, she seemed more in charge than Mayhem and his legion of guards.
And we're always just a pup. You bark and bark and bark, but when the big dogs came, you hide with your tail between your legs. Roy was a paranoid fool, but he could control people, charm them, keep them loyal. You never could.
Mayhem growled and stomped his metal hoof on the ground. Come to kill me. Mock me to my face. You're probably working with these rioters. Bring peace through flames. They wouldn't listen. They think I just give clean water away. Give away red away. Fuck them.
Kill you? You're irrelevant. Always have been.
Molly seemed pleasantly amused by this distraction, but gleefully stepped out of Mayhem's way.
Leave. Go cower with your tail between your legs to your Minotaur masters.
No, you're here to kill me. Mayhem all but charged for 2 steps, but stopped himself just short. But it was frightening enough for all of us to get our weapons out, including Serenity, who was floating her weapon in her magic. He grabbed at where his cybernetic limb connected to his knee. It burns. Burns? Shit.
Mayhem!
I grabbed him by the shoulder with my own cybernetic limb.
Your limb! Where did you say you got it?
Just hearing that made it click in everyone's head.
What? He is one of them?
Molly said, taking a cautionary step backwards.
We must give him assistance. Whatever crimes he has done, he does not deserve that.
Hayes said sagely. Fuck this shit. Leave him to his whinging. We need out. Flair didn't seem amused. Serenity, for her part, just looked shocked and quickly jumped onto my back, expecting a quick exit. Where are you? Mayhem looked at our shocked faces and took a step back, jerking himself from my grasp.
Cerberus, they had me sedated and brought me to their secret. Why are you looking at me like that?
He took a few more steps back.
What? Tell me!
You're a mega spell.
I took 2 steps towards him, basically pushing my way into his pure white office. I used to torture people there on his behalf. It seemed a century ago.
Cerberus put a balefire bomb inside you. I can get you help, but you have to trust me.
Trust you?
He started laughing.
Fuck you. This is some trick. To kill me. That's why you're here. They took my casino. Now you're after me. Get back.
He was stepping back so fast he tripped over the cushion he normally sat on and smacked his head hard against the edge of his desk.
Shit!
I ran forward to help him, to make sure he wasn't hurt.
Calm down. Trust
He opened his eyes and they were glowing green.
me.
His voice sounded like static and the glow in his eyes flashes on and off.
I need help.
I looked up and scanned his guards quickly when I saw her. A smirking mare with a remote control in her hoof, just like the one Dragon Slayer had. Almost effortlessly I grabbed the desk in front of me and tossed it across the room, letting it smack into the mare with a sickening crunch.
Run!
The guards panicked and ran, their loyalty to their dying boss apparently lost. I moved to follow them through the tunnels when Flair grabbed my shoulder.
Upstairs!
He yelled, grabbing the attention of everyone in my party.
The blast might destroy the tunnels. The firestorm will burn us. We can't escape that way. We leave the building or we die.
I didn't know enough about explosions to really question, but when I saw Molly booking it down the pure white hallway, I followed suit with Platinum Haze and Flair not far behind. We slid through the elevator door and it closed behind us while Molly frantically pressed the ground floor button. It was of course an elevator, so it moved agonizingly slowly upwards. What was worse was that there was barely enough room for any of us to stand comfortably. Never mind pace in a panic. Luckily, Flair was there to lighten the mood.
If anyone wants to piss themselves in fear, I don't think any of us would judge you for it.
Did I say lighten the mood? I meant make me want to strangle him. Eventually the door started to slide open, but I didn't have the patience for it, so I kicked it down and started booking it towards the exit. It was all very familiar, except on fire. The building was thoroughly looted, with only stragglers standing by trying to pick the remains of the corpses. I yelled at them to leave, but they wouldn't listen, just stared at me dumbfounded. I couldn't stop for them, not with Serenity on my back. I leaped over corpses of Mustangs and revolutionaries alike as I moved towards the entrance. I was a bulldozer. At least one pony was in my way as I charged through the main casino floor, but I pushed her aside and knocked her over the slot machine she was looting. The light wasn't far then. I could see the burned-out rubble of the door close. I jumped through the hole in the wall and landed on the metal door, my hoofs clanging loudly against it. I looked back briefly to make sure my friends were still following. Also Molly. When I saw they were, I continued on charging. Not even bothering to disrupt my course as the water fountain was before me, loudly blaring music, oblivious to the death, destruction and impending doom. I leapt through the water, took a dozen more steps and turned to look at the building as everyone filed in beside me. It seemed so peaceful, ignoring the corpses and just looking at the dancing and music. It was nice, almost. Boom! The ground shook, the music stopped, the water faded, and the light. It burst forth from the building from every door and window with blinding green light. It felt like forever as I stood there, covering my eyes, but eventually the sound stopped and all there was the gentle ticking of my pip-buck. I opened my eyes. The building was listing, heavily, smoking green and black. The bottom floor looked to be a ruin, and the entire building was cracked. It looked like any other ruin, not the majestic building I first saw when I entered the city. But it was there, burning and smoking, while we were alive. We got out. The building started to fall. The front of the building crumbled in slow motion, and with a great cacophony, The building listed harder and faster. By the time we realized what was happening, the building fell and everything turned black. I awoke in rubble. With a groan, I started to move and push. Everything hurt and the air smelled like smoke and blood. Whatever was on top of me was heavy and my bones were sore. But I pushed against it with all my might. My muscles ached and I felt myself let out a wordless scream. Slowly the piece that was on me started to budge, and with it, light started to filter in. It burned, so I closed my eyes and kept pushing. Slowly, it moved. I got myself to a standing position as I pushed against it. I realized in that moment the piece of rubble in question was a wall. It wasn't my imagination then. The moon. With another voiceless scream, I pushed the wall aside and it crashed away from me. I looked around, trying to understand what had happened. I was standing in a crater of rubble, with just a final layer of rubble covering the ground. Platinum Haze's shield, I realized, but it must have not lasted. Platinum... Shit! I dove back down, digging through the ground. I was safe, but I was also harder to kill than a hellhound in power armor. The others... I found Serenity first. I didn't realize it happened, but I must have called around her to protect her, and she was still awake, sobbing loudly. Shh. Shh. I started to pet her mane.
I'm here. We're safe.
She started to mumble something through her tears, but I just shushed her.
It's fine. We're safe. Don't worry. Just rest. It's safe.
She started to calm down, but was still sobbing. I wanted to spend a lot longer comforting her, but I had to find the others. Platinum Haze was easy to find too, given how large she was. I took off the bits of rubble that had fallen through the wall that covered us to find her unconscious, but mostly unharmed. Though her dress was ripped and torn and her injured wing was twisted in a way that didn't look natural. I went to look for the others, but as I did, Molly sat up behind me.
Ugh.
She looked around at the rubble.
Wow, I never liked the building, but...
I rolled my eyes and kept searching as Molly frantically looked for her hat. Eventually I found blue feathers sticking out of rubble. I reached down and grabbed the feathers and pulled, trying to dislodge Flare. Instead, my head snapped back easily. In my mouth was a wing, dripping blood. My brain took a minute to realize what had happened when I saw the rest of Flare a few feet away. Bits of flesh and bone sticking out of his back and bleeding profusely, where the rest of his wing should have been. Level up. Skill node. Speech 95. Survival 95. New perk. Bloody Mess. With the Bloody Mess perk, characters and creatures you kill will often explode in a red, gut-ridden, eyeball-strewn paste. Fun. Oh, and you'll do 5% more damage with all weapons. Increases the chance of dismemberment.
We here at Pony&Wolf Productions thank these amazing patrons of ours for their monthly support, without which all of this would not be possible. We sincerely appreciate it, and every dollar helps, is needed, and will be used to keep us going to produce audiobooks for your continued enjoyment. It is, now more than ever, important that you support your favorite creators if possible, due to YouTube changing in a way that is not very friendly to content creators. Especially small content creators, like us. In recent months, the names you see on screen have enabled Midnight and Visual Pony to keep going and only having to sell off part of their belongings to not end up on the street. As an incentive for everyone, Visual Pony has broken a vow and has promised to read and record FalloutEquestria, Murky number 7, should the monthly support reach $1,500. To be clear, this is the absolute minimum amount needed to keep the apartment and all bills paid without starving, while a production of this size is ongoing. The estimated time for this production would be 3 to 4 years, but people already said that Project Horizons was impossible to do, right? And now look who did it, so with Pony and Wolf, you know we can finish the job. For further information on how to support us, please have a look at the description of this video, as there are also other ways, like our merch store. Sincerely and forever yours, your Pony and Wolf team.